What's going on, everybody? Cowboy C3. I don't think that it was a secret, or it is a secret, that last year the Cowboys were, for lack of better words, horrendous against the run. They were terrible. And it all starts up front with the defensive line. And their defensive line play last year was not good. You've got a first-round pick that hasn't played very well. You had some older gentlemen that stepped in to play the opposing defensive tackle that weren't very well. And you had one guy that was consistent. And that guy just so happens to be a free agent. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about some Micah Parsons being traded news. It seems kind of crazy, but, it's a thing. And, one of the best Cowboys of all time hung it up, called it a career. And he had a wonderful career. And we'll talk about that, too, right here next on Cowboy Spit.
Here we go! Yeah, here we go! Wait, take Cowboy Spit.
Throws back of the end zone. There's
What's going on, everybody? Cowboy C3. Hey, Cowboy news. Big news, man. Zach Martin calls it a career. And, it was a wonderful career. He had one of the craziest stat lines I have ever seen. What's going on? It's not that serious. Hey, I was trying my best to do some things in here, and I made some slight purchases that I felt like would make this a little bit better. And I wanted to wait till I got everything in a bunch and put it all together. You can see the lighting in here is a little different. Got a couple little pictures painting things in the back. I just wanted to make it a little bit more appeasing to the eye. You know what I'm saying? So I waited, and hopefully it turns out good. I think it will. But anyway, Zach Martin calls it a career. And I'm going to show y'all just a crazy, crazy, crazy stat line about Zach Martin. Zach Martin had more all-pro selections than he had holding penalties in his career. That is crazy. Crazy. And I promise you, he got called for more holding penalties in this season, especially after he had back problems. And, he just got, like I said, Father Time caught up with him. And that's okay, because Father Time catches up with all of us. Zach Martin, he'll have the individual accolades. Team success, not so much. I mean, he plays for the Dallas Cowboys. But he should be a first ballot Hall of Famer, man. He really should. There was no better guard in the NFL for a long, long time. 12 seasons, 9 all-pro selections. Like, you don't get any better than that. And, it was hard to watch last year, hard to watch him, because I kept blaming Terrence Steele for everything that was happening with the offensive line. And the more and more you start to dissect it, and the more and more you started to watch, it was Zach Martin. And you're like, damn, man, that's tough, because he's the best. He's always been the best. He's been the best since he was in the NFL. Last time he wasn't with the Cowboys, Tony Romo was the quarterback. DeMarco Murray. Dez Bryant was probably, he got drafted during that time and already spent, already did his whole career in the NFL. He already, retired. Zach Martin's been around the league for a long, long time. And it's tough to hear him. It's tough to hear that he called it a career, but it was also, man, you could tell last year it was time. It was time. He just had a rough one. And I wish him nothing but the best. I hope that the Cowboys keep him involved, because one thing that he does well is that they talk about how much of a leader he is, and how well he'll take the younger cats and kind of teach them what's going on. And maybe they can find some sort of position for him. Maybe, I hope so. I hope that that's something that they would be willing to do, because Zach Martin, I mean, one day he's going to wear a gold jacket. He has to wear a gold jacket. Zach Martin, I'm calling that one right now. Zach Martin has to be in the Hall of Fame. Wonderful, wonderful career. I wish Zach Martin nothing but success in the rest of his life. Nothing but good wishes and all that stuff. Man, he had a stellar career, and he was one of the backbones to the Cowboy offensive line, especially when it was him, Lael Collins, Tyron Smith was young. Who was it? Travis Frederick was the center. Travis Frederick had to retire early, to a nerve thing that caught his career early. That was one of the best offensive lines of all time. That was a fantastic offensive line, and they didn't get to play together a long time because I think Travis Frederick only lasted about 4 or 5 seasons in the NFL. But Father Time catches up to all of us. Zach Martin calls it a career. Next big story in Cowboy news, man, has been this. It's been this Micah Parsons trade. And I don't really know how I feel about it. I really don't. I understand that the Cowboys, we'll talk about this more in just a few minutes, but the Cowboys just do not have they don't have a lot of talent at all on the defensive line left. You have 2 free agents, one in Osa Odighizuwa and another one in DeMarcus Lawrence, that have been around the Cowboys for a while, especially DeMarcus Lawrence. And I don't know if he has been great, but he's been very good. To be honest with you, he's probably the best run stopper that we have on the defensive line, and that's crazy coming from the defensive end, from a guy that's not really that big. But DeMarcus Lawrence, his time may be coming up short, and that's a lot of money that you pay a guy that has been injured a couple of times in the last few years, that has that Lindstrom injury, and he hasn't. It always pops up. DeMarcus Lawrence, him calling it, probably gonna go and play elsewhere. And if not, they'll try to restructure his contract to where they don't sign him, for as much money as they're paying him right now, which that's kind of hard for somebody to take. But Micah Parsons he's your backbone now of your defense. And to trade him, I think, would be crazy. But there are a lot of people that think maybe they should. Maybe they should. And, I'll let you hear what Chris Canty had to say about it.
Dallas Cowboys need to trade Micah Parsons. They need to trade Micah Parsons.
Why?
They have to, at some point, start taking culture seriously. You don't get closer to winning a championship by getting rid of those players, typically. But when you got somebody that has been as vocal as he has, that has at various points gotten himself in trouble with his podcast, saying certain things about his teammates, about the league, there's an opportunity for the Dallas Cowboys this offseason to show the rest of that locker room that our culture here matters. You have to send a message to the rest of the players that this is not something that's going to be tolerated.
Now, Cowboy fans, we just went through this with Luka Doncic. We just went through it. What's going on, Willie T? How you doing, man? We just went through the same thing with Luka Doncic. And Luka constantly coming in overweight, constantly injured, constantly needing time, the team constantly making up injuries so he can get in shape. And it was a culture thing in the locker room. They couldn't tell him what to do. They couldn't do this. They couldn't do that. So they ultimately traded him. And they didn't get very much for him. They didn't at all. Maverick fans, which a lot of Maverick fans are Cowboy fans as well because it's the same city, they didn't take that too well. They didn't take that well at all. Like caskets outside the damn stadium, people are still mad. Nico Harrison shows up anywhere, they're ready to kill him. I just don't think you can trade Micah Parsons. Like, I don't. And I tend to agree more with First Take more than anything. Check this out.
He needs to be drug
Chris,
tested.
I love you. I wish we did TV more together. You're out of your damn mind with this one.
Out of your mind.
Look, Let me give some context here before I dive into why this is so silly, and I disagree. So when Miles Garrett requested a trade, right, Super Bowl week, I was grabbing some numbers on Miles Garrett, and he has been amazing. Last couple of years, second in just about every metric. The reason he is second is because Micah Parsons is first over the last 2 years. First in pressure rate, first in pass rush win, the most double edge rusher in the NFL. Doubled, by the way, at twice the rate of Trey Hendrickson in Cincinnati. He is a generational player. He is the kind of player GMs dream their entire careers of drafting. The idea that the Dallas Cowboys should move on from this level of game breaker because he podcasts? Like, he's a little bit outspoken. I mean, I've heard some of his quotes. They have not been about the Cowboys in a negative fashion. In fact, he came back from injury and played harder than half of the NFL. To trade him would send a message about culture for sure. That is the wrong message, which is we do not value our best homegrown players. I think it would be a move that would set this franchise back for, honestly, years and years.
Willie T, you took the words out of my mouth. Every single time a Dallas Cowboy player is about to get paid, and especially if it is a big player big time player that's about to get paid, this is what happens. It's always something. It's some trade rumors, some trade discussions. Maybe they don't like him. Maybe they don't want to sign him. Maybe he's becoming a problem in the locker room. Sources say that there are problems with Micah in the locker room and that the team is fed up with his antics. Look, man. Not this dude. There's no way you can give him up. And, Micah Parsons is definitely a generational talent. Has he had issues disappearing in big games? Sure. Absolutely. Dallas Cowboys have had issues showing up in big games for 30 years now. You know what I'm saying? I don't think that him running his mouth, and Willie, you said he does talk too much. Yes, he talks too much. The podcast is a bit much. The way that he is vocal about, his vocality has literally not got him a holding penalty in almost a year. You know what I'm saying? Like, he runs his mouth too goddamn much, for real. But one thing about Micah Parsons is that he's going to play hard. He's going to show up. He'll be in shape. I tell you that much. He's going to come in. He's been a constant, other than last year, him getting a high ankle sprain against the Giants. He's been a constant on that defensive line. He's been there every single game, good or bad. He's been there. And I don't think you can give that up. Not right now. You already don't have a lot of talent on that defensive line, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. You don't have a lot of talent on that defensive line at all. The last thing you need to do is get rid of the one bright light that you have over there. You cannot do that. Micah needs to stick to football, in my opinion. It doesn't sound very intelligent at times. I don't disagree with you, Hydra. I don't. Sometimes he runs his mouth too much. I agree. Runs his mouth too much. And sometimes he can stick his foot in his mouth and it'll get him in trouble. And sometimes it'll get him tackled on the football field, right? And they will not call the holding penalty at all for him because he run his damn mouth about the officials and everything else in the NFL too much. He does. However, you better double team him. You better plan for him. I tell you that. Offensive coordinators, any offensive coordinator that the Dallas Cowboys are about to play, I guarantee you they planning for number 11. I promise you that. And there aren't many players in the NFL that are like that. There aren't many players when they say, okay, we're about to play the Dallas Cowboys. We better plan for who? Number 11. Number 11 and number 88. That's who you better plan for. And those are the guys that you need on the roster. Now, there are, right? Agreed. As long as the Cowboys and everybody's mouth, man, it don't matter. And we got to do something to stir up some shit, you know? So, with me, you have to look at the whole thing. And there is some truth behind it. There may be some truth behind it because there's so many people talking about it. And this is the one thing that you kind of have to take into consideration. Check this out. This is from John Middlecoff.
I started thinking, what would they get from Micah Parsons? Like you're getting 2 1s and a 2. And in their position where they are so devoid of talent, it's tough because the whole point, and I saw this when the Raiders traded Khalil Mack, and financially it was a little different. Like Mark Davis at the time just didn't have the $90 million cash. The Cowboys just basically would be a 3-man team if they did this. Obviously, Jerry has the cash to pay him, but it's a similar thing. The whole point of a draft, beside like drafting to find your star quarterback, is to literally find guys like Micah Parsons or Khalil Mack in the draft, especially when you have a high first-round pick. I'm usually against, like, what's the whole point of this whole thing? But given the way they've built their team and their financial constraints, I think you would have to think long and hard about it.
Now, one thing that everybody keeps talking about is these financial constraints. And I just don't agree with it. I don't think the Cowboys have financial constraints. And I can show you right now how they don't. The Dallas Cowboys have $2.47 million in salary cap space right now, which is low. That's low as hell. Total cap liabilities is $298.55 million. Potential moves to create cap space. Dak Prescott is due $89 million this year. You drop that down by $37.1 million to a reasonable salary. Restructure CeeDee Lamb to 20.5. Terrence Steele restructured to 9. Trayvon Diggs restructured to 5. And I got a lot of questions about Trayvon Diggs, and I got a lot of questions about Terrence Steele too, even if they're going to be there. And you extend Micah Parsons, you bump him up by $18.2 million. That'll leave you $98.87 million in salary cap space. All this was done February 19th. Zach Martin just retired. That opens up another $17 million in salary cap space. This team has plenty of room. They have plenty of room to do things. Now, we all know what it is, man. It's just up to Jerry whether he's going to do it. And then, you have this. They just opened up the salary cap to $277 from $277.5 million to $281.5 million. That's up from last year's $255.4 million, and it's over $53 million in the last 2 years. You have room to do things. You do. You have room. Now, are you gonna do it? That's the whole question. Is Jerry gonna do it? Jerry's gonna move Micah because Jerry's about maximizing possibilities at the worst times. Look, even though I don't disagree with you, Hydra, I just don't think. For one, Jerry is very big about his image, especially in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. He is real big on his image in the Metroplex. Right now, I promise you that Jerry is happy that he is not the most hated GM in Dallas. I promise you that. He's like, I finally got some relief. I'm not the most hated guy. The last thing that Jerry wants to do is go right back into the, it's already going to be rough for him if he don't do shit this free agency. It's already going to be rough for him if he don't restructure some of these contracts and make room so they can do something in free agency. It's already going to be bad if he botches this draft too. 2 years, we got one good player. One. And that guy can't stay healthy. Demarion Overshown can't stay healthy. Lou Fowl may end up being a good linebacker. He was decent last year. He had his moments. He also had some moments where he wasn't that great. Mozzie Smith, your number one draft pick, 2 years ago, not good. Your first round draft pick last year, Tyler Guyton, not a great season. You can't botch this one. You can't botch this one at all, and you cannot botch free agency. And Steven has come out and openly said that we understand that we've made mistakes the way we've done things in the past, especially tackling free agency, and we know we need to go into it this year with an open mind. The easiest way to do that is to open up salary cap space so you can afford some of these cats. That is the easiest way to do it. Now, I will say, I'll give you that, Willie T. Mozzie looked a lot better towards the end of the season. And I think that Mozzie is started to click for Mozzie. And I hope that it did. I really do. Because if you can sign Osa Odighizuwa, you know what? I'll let Jesse Holly tell y'all about Osa Odighizuwa, man. Because I am a big Osa Odighizuwa fan, and I feel like that. I feel like Jesse Holley a lot. Like he feels a lot.
You have to go and now compete with other folks with the dollar amount. When you could have been looking at this a year or so ago and said, you know what? Let's just give this guy the money now, and now we won't have to worry about it in 2 years. And now he can't press us to now going from $12 to $15 million, where now he's going to demand $20 million because the market says so. Like, these are the things that we look at when it comes to the Cowboys and say, you wait to the very last minute, and then you get get bent over with no Vaseline, and get, you know what I'm saying, and get done up on these contracts. And now you have to have the battling situation of, do we keep them? Don't we keep them? And now if you don't have them, to your point, you don't have anything. So now you're almost forced to go out and pay the premium price for a guy who's already big in your organization, who you could have had for a much cheaper price, because guys like Osa, who are trying to get to that second contract, would have taken that money to be a part of this because they don't know what the future holds.
Willie, I hope you're right. I hope that it is less than $20 million. I do. I hope they can bring him in for 16, 18 million, and he'll come in and pay off big dividends like he has been the last few years. However, on the defensive line that did absolutely nothing, he was the constant. He was the one that was constantly applying pressure. He was the one that was moving the crowd. And a lot of teams saw that. A lot of teams saw it. And, you know, if he comes in and asks for 18 to 20 million, Jerry got to pay him. You botched this one too. You waited too long. You could have signed him last year. You could have signed him the year before that. You knew he was decent. He was the one guy on your defensive line that was moving the crowd. Defensive tackles, not defensive line in total, defensive tackles. He was the one. Now, it is not that serious. I agree with you 100%. The Eagles and the Commanders are the biggest problem we got because we got to play them twice a year. One thing that the Eagles taught you, or that you should have learned from the Eagles, is that if you have a dominant defensive line, you can win a championship. You can. We don't even know if the Eagles secondary is good. We don't. We don't even know if they're good. We don't even know if their linebackers are good, because the defensive line for the Philadelphia Eagles was that disruptive. That disruptive. You know, they went, I mean, the same thing these cats, Jalen Carter and these other cats were doing at University of Georgia is the same shit they doing in the NFL right now. It's the same thing. Just being disruptive. Changing the line of scrimmage. That is the most important thing that you can do as a defensive lineman, is absolutely change the line of scrimmage, and that's what they do. That's what they do. They change the line of scrimmage, and you should have learned. So, I don't disagree with you, Willie. Not at all. I really don't. However, Williams, his market value is $12 million because of Jalen Carter and the rest of that defensive line. That's the reason that his worth may be a little bit less than what it really is. Osa Odighizuwa was the one bright spot for the Cowboys. Osa knows that, the Cowboys know that, and Osa's agent knows that. When they go into negotiations with the Dallas Cowboys, they're going to say, hey, you're going to have to pay me $18, $20 million. Especially if you make this salary cap room. You're going to have to pay me. You're going to have to pay me. Now, there's some other defensive tackles, and I'll show you I'll show you that in a little bit. But, I mean, I don't know. Jerry's a fossil that has been shown he botched last season because Jerry is Jerry. Then go 5 or 6 wins and get the way. So nothing ever changes. I have no argument, Hydra. None whatsoever. He say, Willie, I'm telling you, man, you go back and look. He's the only thing on that defensive line that's moving anything. The rest of them, they bad. Linval Joseph, Mozzie Smith flashed at times. Osa was the constant. And Chauncey Golston, they were the two constants all year. And Chauncey was there because of injury. But Sam Williams will be back this year. Marshawn, what's his name? Marshawn. I can't remember his last name. He'll be there again. Well, he's just a rookie last year. Marshawn Nealon will be there again. DeMarcus Lawrence probably won't be there. Micah Parsons, I hope he is. And if not, you better get a whole lot of trade value for him. I mean, a whole lot. You have to have something that's constant in the middle. You have to. Mozzie Smith, even though he flashed sometimes, it wasn't him. It's not him. Osa was that guy. He was. If Williams gets $12 million and that's the highest Osa will ever get, it's 15 at most. And I wouldn't be mad at $15 million. I wouldn't be mad at $15 million at all. Matter of fact, we can afford $15 million pretty easily, right? Especially if they do what they're supposed to do. They can definitely afford $15 million. $20 million, you're starting to push it. You really are. You're starting to push it. Especially for a guy that, I mean, he hasn't been Pro Bowl selections or anything like that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he's been good, but he hasn't been great. He's just been good for this team, you know? That's about it. Anyway, speaking of defensive line and team needs, as you can see right here, I got it broken down to where the starter needs high. So you're talking about your potential first round and second round draft picks. Right there at the top, nose tackle, 3 techniques, and edges, right? Those are things that the Cowboys absolutely need. They need them. They need them. I mean, they need them bad. And there are some guys that are coming up in this draft that you can say are great. The problem is that 2 of them are Michigan Wolverines. I am not a big fan of Michigan Wolverine, especially defensive linemen. They just haven't worked out for the Dallas Cowboys at all. And I don't think that, I don't know if you, I'm not sure that you should, I'm not even sure that you should waste your time and draft some of Mason Graham for University of Michigan is a fantastic defensive lineman at the University of Michigan right now. He's great, right? So would I sign Williams or Osa? I signed Osa. Strictly for what he's done for the team. Don't get me wrong. I think Williams is a fantastic player, but I think Osa can give you that same output. He's giving you that same output. He's the only thing. He's the only person on the defensive line for the Cowboys that is giving you that kind of push. Mason Graham is different. I don't disagree. He is ultra different. And I think other than Abdul Carter, he's probably the best player in the draft. Best defensive lineman in the draft. Played 2 totally different positions. I understand that. I think Abdul Carter has the potential to be like an all-pro player, something, you know, like Micah Parsons. I think he has that capability. But I think Mason Graham just getting after the football, man, I think that he can do that. I really do. And I think that he changes the line of scrimmage. I think he has good technique. I think he has natural strength, and I think that he can make a difference. I just think that the Cowboys don't have luck with Michigan football players. We said the same exact thing about Mozzie Smith. The same thing. I think there's some players like James Pierce Jr. from Tennessee that could give the Cowboys some value, especially at the defensive end position. One of those long, lanky guys that just gets after the quarterback. Kind of reminds you of not necessarily Micah Parsons, but who would he remind you of? Somebody like Sweat in Philly. Somebody's just a long, lanky guy that has a lot of reach that's gonna get after the quarterback. You know, there's some guys in this draft that can do some good things. There's some guys in free agency that can give you a little bit of spark, but I think that this draft, this 2025 draft, the strong point of this draft is your defensive, especially your edge rush. That's your strong suit in this draft. And I think that you may be able to replace DeMarcus Lawrence with that. I think that if you can open up the money, I think that a Miles Garrett trade would be phenomenal. I do. I think that it would work for the team, right? But you have to have the money, and you're going to have to give up some draft picks, and you're probably going to have to give up your number one draft pick. And then that means if you give up your number one draft pick, then Ashton Jeanty is just out of the picture. And is that worth it? I think the Eagles showed you that it was worth it. Sam Acho, let him tell you about what he thinks about Miles Garrett coming to the Cowboys.
It's got to be to revamp their defense, specifically their defensive line. The Dallas Cowboys last year were 31st in points allowed. That was one of the worst defenses in all of the NFL. And so if they want to get better and be able to compete like the Eagles did, they got to start with defense. Running game will be fine. Figure out the running attack, figure out the offensive line, but defense wins championships, point blank period. We saw it earlier. I think it was week 2 of the season. They couldn't stop Alvin Kamara and the New Orleans Saints. And the season went on, and I get it. There were injuries, but their defense was porous at best. And so revamp the defense. I would say start with the defensive line, and that'll give the entire team a chance for success.
Such a good cliche, but it's so true. Defense wins championships. Okay, now, as I mentioned, favorite person, favorite segment. Here it is. Make Sam smile. So you're going to give us 3 off-season moves for Dallas that would make Sam smile.
Well, the first one's already got me smiling just thinking about it. The first move that'll make Sam smile is for the Dallas Cowboys to trade for Miles Garrett. And here's why. Miles Garrett is a defensive player of the year. Miles Garrett grew up in the Dallas area. Miles Garrett, alongside Micah Parsons, could be an unstoppable force and an immovable object on the same team. And so all of a sudden, Miles Garrett, who's already asked to be traded, is getting the opportunity to put the star back in the star, put the star back on America's team. So that's number one. Trade for Miles Garrett.
Now, Willie, his number 2 thing on here is draft Ashton Jeanty. My question to you and my question to everybody would be, what can you give up if you don't give up your first round pick this year? What can you give up where you could even trade for somebody like Miles Garrett? And there's a possibility you would have to give up some future first round picks, but you would have to come to agreement that Miles Garrett is better than anything that you can get in 2026 and probably 2027 as well. Because it would take that. It would take something like, hey, I will give you my 2026, 2027 first round picks, and I'll give you my 3rd round pick this year for Miles Garrett. And I think the question would be no. Miles Garrett, could you imagine it would make the Cowboys defensive line top 3 in the NFL. If you have Miles Garrett on one side and Micah Parsons on the other side, you better 3-step drops and get rid of the ball because they coming. It's definitely not being realistic. It's not being realistic at all. But it's not being realistic because that is what the past 30 years have shown you. Now, if the Cowboy, if the front office has really, really, really decided to go all in this year and they understand what they haven't done in the past and they need to do it from now on, this would be the one move that would put them in the right direction and it would get the fan base back to where they're being positive about the football team. It would. Listen, I'm agreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you at all, Willie. But my thing is this. First of all, full disclosure, I don't agree. I don't disagree with you at all. I think we need Jeanty in the first round. I believe that wholeheartedly because if you look at the free agent running backs, besides somebody like Nick Chubb, there's really nobody that's really even that interesting. And Nick Chubb wasn't really that great. He was coming off a horrific knee injury last year, and maybe he'll be better this year, but I don't know. You don't know the answer to that. Another name that has been thrown around here is Raheem Mostert. Raheem Mostert is I think he's 32 years old. I don't think that you want to build your team around a 32-year-old running back, especially when your head coach is, he's going to run the football. I just don't think that you do that. I don't think that there's any way that you can't draft Genty in the first round. The only way that I can see it in not happening is if Tatori McMillan is available, and it makes you make a decision whether you want a 6'5" receiver, something that the Cowboys have never had, that guy that can get down the field and would make you not be able to double team CD Lamb at all, or do you need a running back? Do you need somebody that's going to move the crowd? And I think you need Genty. That's what I believe. I believe you need Genty. I believe you need a running back like that. However, if you can give up some future things, you have to fix this defensive line, and you have to fix it now. I believe Miles Garrett can do that. However, I don't know if there's anything that you can give up that is worth getting that. And if you get Miles Garrett, then you're not going to have a first round pick. Like, it's not going to happen. And this is your weak link on your football team. This is the weak link on your football team. Your defensive line was horrendous. Your linebackers ran around last year. They had to literally get a defensive lineman off their legs, the person that was blocking them, the offensive lineman that was blocking the defensive lineman off of their legs, and then try to get to the football. And that's why they couldn't stop the run. The most important thing in a football game is the line of scrimmage. It doesn't matter what level of football you're playing. It doesn't matter if you're playing Pop Warner football, middle school football, high school football, college football, or in the NFL. You win the football game in the trenches. That's where you win. And the Cowboys' trenches last year were bad, and that's why they were bad. You had opportunities last year to fill some voids. You chose not to. And that's fine. The past is the past. You cannot let the same thing happen this year. All of your defensive linemen, Linval Joseph, Chauncey Golston, they're all free agents. Osa Odighizuwa, DeMarcus Lawrence, they're all free agents. This is the opportunity for you to rebuild this defensive line. You've got one more year with Micah Parsons if you decide that you're going to let him play through this contract year. You have one more year with him, and then your defensive line is literally gone. This is the one position where you have to sign everybody. Everybody. You can start over. This is your chance for a fresh start. Eberflus can get the type of players that he needs in here to make his defense successful. And it's all going to start on this defensive line. Miles Garrett will give you that. But the Cowboys have to make a decision on, is that worth what it's going to cost to get him? Because Cleveland's not going to trade him. They're not going to give him away like the Mavericks did for Luka Doncic. They're not going to do that. They're going to demand some shit for him. That's for sure. Just like if the Cowboys wanted to trade Micah Parsons, they're going to demand some shit for him. You're going to have to pay. You have to pay. If you want that kind of talent, you have to pay for it. You're absolutely right that the defensive line is a fix now, because that is the key to the football team. The Eagles showed you that all the way to a Super Bowl victory. The defensive line is what will win you championships. That's where you win. If you can control the line of scrimmage on defense and you can keep the other team from scoring, your offense don't have to score that many points. They don't have to be that great. You can just turn around and hand the ball off to Saquon Barkley all the way to the damn Super Bowl, where it was so surprising that Jalen Hurts was throwing the football around. Kansas City didn't even know what to do. They absolutely keyed in on Saquon Barkley. Absolutely. They shut that ass down. The problem was they didn't shut down anything else. Hell, because nobody had to do it against the Eagles. All you had to do was shut down 26. People forgot Jalen Hurts could actually throw a football. It is what it is. And then on defense, they turned around and they had Patrick Mahomes looking lost. They got 5 sacks and blitzed once in the football game. Once. Super Bowl victory, you blitz once, and you sack Patrick Mahomes 5 times. You can't make that shit up. The defensive line is that important. You have to have a good defensive line in order to be successful. You do. And there are some opportunities with this defensive line in the draft this year with the defensive line. I'm a big fan. I love Abdul Carter. Abdul Carter, you can tell he's just a Micah Parsons clone. I love him. I don't. Well, Cowboys defense focused on the pass rush and not stopping the run. I mean, yeah. You're running Micah Parsons. Your defensive line, they're not changing the line of scrimmage, Willie. They not. No penetration. The only person that was getting a little bit of penetration was Osa Odighizuwa. It was super duper frustrating to watch. There was one play, and I want to say it was a play that it happened twice. So it was two separate games, two separate plays, but the same results. I watched Mozzie Smith land in the end zone on an Alvin Kamara run, and it was like a 14-yard run. And I was trying to figure out how the hell Mozzie Smith got in the end zone. He just got blown up. And then he did the same thing again against Baltimore. And there's no way that I'm 315 pounds and I'm getting driven back driven back 12 yards into the end zone and watching this dude jog in. You have to change the line of scrimmage. You have to. And you're right, Willie. You said it a little while ago. He got better. He did. He got a lot better. But are you willing to anchor your defense around Mozzie Smith? I'm not. But the thing about Miles Garrett, though, Willie, is that he's not a free agent. You're going to have to trade for him. And to be honest with you, you don't have much draft capital to trade. Your talent level on this football team is not that great. I mean, just go back and check it out. Look at your needs. Running back, wide receiver, nose tackle, 3 technique, edge, inside linebacker, offensive tackle, offensive guard, safety, cornerback. Like, there's a lot of needs on this football team. I mean, a lot. And, you know, you have to do something with that. And I think that the one place that you start, my next show will be about the other side of the trench, is you have to start on your defensive line. I really don't think that your offensive line is in that bad a position. I really don't. I like BB at center. I like Brock Hoffman, even though he's a free agent. He's a restricted free agent, and you're going to get first dibs at him, and I think that he'll re-sign, and you don't have to sign him for a lot of money because he's only started like maybe, 8 football games in his entire NFL career, but those 8 games he played extremely well. Terrence Steele, if you can get him budgeted, get his salary cut down, you can keep him. Tyler Smith is your one guy that is Tyler Smith is your one guy that is he's your all-pro talent now. Now that Zach Martin is gone, I mean, Tyler Smith is one of the best guards in the NFL. And hell, if he moved to tackle, he'd be one of the best tackles in the NFL. But you got to get Tyler Guyton right. You have to get him right. And hopefully this new offensive line coach can get him right. He just needs some work. He's raw. He's tall. You know, if he extends his arms in any kind of way, dude is 6'8". If he extends his arms in any type of way, it's a holding penalty. You know, they have to get him right. They have to get him playing well. And I'm not against moving him to right tackle and maybe saying bye to Terrence Steele and just find you a left tackle somewhere. But Zach Martin, him leaving definitely left a hole. It left a void for sure. No matter what Jerry does, we're looking at a complete rebuild because we don't have the ability to get enough in trades on the draft to do a quick turnaround. Right. And I don't disagree with you, Hydra, but one thing that I do say how you can fix it is that you open up salary cap space and you attack this in free agency. You bring in some free agents. You have to. You have to. Or you just going to sign some dudes like Linval Joseph off the streets that are going to come in and get their ass whooped. But you got to fix these trenches. This is the most important. I think this is the weak link on the football team. I do. I think it's the defensive line. Because, hell, we don't know if the Eagles secondary is any good because their defensive line is so great. Hell, they just catching pop-ups. Who knows if Cooper DeJean can really cover? Have you really seen him in a game where he had to cover receiver one-on-one for any extended amount of time? I mean extended amount of time, I mean like 3 seconds. Because that's all you're getting with that defensive line. That's it. If they don't get Miles Garrett, Micah's playing career will be short. I hate to say it. Teams have been double-teaming him. Agreed. And with somebody like Miles Garrett, you cannot double-team him. because the other one is just going to eat. Now, Juan, I'll ask you this. Is it worth what you have to give up to get somebody like Miles Garrett? Because you're going to have to give up a lot. I don't know if it is. I'm not sure. I don't know. Everything depends on how long they wait to free up some money. That includes signing Micah. Agreed. Now, if you're going to do this, like, you need to start opening up money now. And one of the main stories that dropped today, is that they hadn't even done any negotiation talks with Micah Parsons yet. They haven't even started. So, once again, we fall into this rut where you're going to wait till the last minute. You're going to wait till the last minute, and you're going to either have to pay more, or you're not going to open up this cap space in order to free up some money where you can do this. The classic example was last year. You waited to before the last preseason game and the first game of the season, and I'm talking about 2 or 3 hours before the first game of the season, to re-sign CeeDee Lamb and re-sign Dak Prescott, and magically $28 million opens up in your salary cap space. When you know full well that salary cap space would be open if you signed them during the summer. They knew that, and they decided not to do it. And they sat here the whole offseason crying to everybody about how we had no salary cap room. We had no room to sign anybody, right? And that we were just going to have to go with what we got because we don't have the room to do it. And magically, you sign these two players and salary cap space opens up. You got everybody still talking about how the Cowboys have no salary cap space. They don't have this. They don't have that. And you literally can open up salary cap space by renegotiating some of these contracts. Hell, people will negotiate contracts if you tell them or you show them that I'm going to attack free agency and I'm going to bring in better players into this organization to give us a better chance to win. You said you give up the first this year and the first next year. There's no one better than Miles Garrett coming out in the draft. Now, Juan, I don't disagree with you. I don't think that there's a better maybe Abdul Carter, maybe he'll turn into somebody that's better than that. But the Cowboys need offensive help too. They need something dynamic. They need something dynamic on the offensive side of the ball that's not named CeeDee Lamb. Because if you don't do that, the same thing that you're saying about Micah Parsons is the same thing that I could say about CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb is double covered every game. You have to take the pressure off him some kind of way. You can take the pressure off him in the run game. You can't occupy that many people on CeeDee Lamb because you got to bring an extra person in the box to stop this run. And you can do that with Ashton Genty. You can't double CeeDee Lamb if you get a wide receiver like Torrey McMillan. I don't want the Cowboys to turn into this pass-happy offense where Dak Prescott is throwing the ball 50 times a game. I don't think that they don't play well that way. They play better running the football. They do. And I think that Ashton Genty will give you that dynamic. I do. You have to be able to run the football. You have to get some skill. Look, Willie, we're on the same page. You have to get some skilled players on offense. You have to. You don't have a choice. You cannot go into this season with no running back, CeeDee Lamb, and Dak Prescott and say, okay, Dak, win us a Super Bowl. This shit's not going to happen. And then it'll be Dak's fault again. Looks like it is every year. Oh, shit, it's Dak's fault. Dak did this and Dak did that. And this team is just put together bad, man. You either got a dynamic offense and no defense. You got a great defense and no offense. And last year they had no offense and no defense. And everybody got hurt. You can't do that shit no more, man. People tired of that. What will Will Hernandez do for the offense, Juan? What would he do for the offense? we have to be able, this is the thing, is we have to be able to run the football. And our 2 running backs on the roster right now are Deuce Vaughn and Hunter Lemke. Those are your 2 running backs, because Rico Dowdle is a free agent and Zeke is gone. You don't have that luxury. You don't have it. You're probably the best running back in free agency, and we just did the running back show the other day. Probably the best running back free agency. Aaron Jones, maybe. Maybe Aaron Jones. Okay. I got you. I understand that. He knows the offensive coordinator. I get that. I understand that. And Will Hernandez is where does Will Hernandez fit on the offensive line for the Dallas Cowboys? Is Will Hernandez better than Brock Hoffman? Brock Hoffman is younger than Will Hernandez. I get it. I understand that he's coming from the Cardinals. I understand that. I get that. He understands how it works. He understands how the offense is going to be structured. He understands how the line is going to be structured. He understands the blocking schemes. He understands all that. I get it. But I'd rather have somebody like Brock Hoffman, somebody that's young, got fresh legs, not coming off an ACL injury. I get that. But then again, who would Will Hernandez be blocking for? That's the most important question. Who would he be blocking for? I think Deuce would be great in a system where he's not running the ball up the middle. Because no matter how you look at it, Deuce got all his runs, got all his running yards, and all of his stats in college against the Big 12. And we all know that the Big 12 is not that great defensively. We all know that. There's a big, big difference between running the ball in the Big 12 and running the ball in the NFL. Now, I do think that there are ways that you can get Deuce Vaughn the ball and he can be dynamic. I do think that. But Deuce Vaughn as an every down back, nah, ain't no way. I'm not putting my offense. I'm not putting 25, 30 carries on Deuce Vaughn. I'm not doing that. Now, I would give Deuce 5 or 6 carries, and I'd give Deuce some swing passes out of the backfield. I would absolutely do that. But I'm not counting on Deuce to run off tackle for me the entire football game. I'm not doing that. I can't do that. I understand that's why you brought the coach in. You brought the coach in because he's a good offensive line coach. And you probably brought him in more because of Cooper Beebe than you did Deuce Vaughn. You did. You're going to have a running back with some oomph back there. You're going to have a 215, 220-pound dude that's going to come back there that can run off tackle, and he can also get outside and make some big runs for you. You're going to have to do that. Deuce can't do that, but Ashton Jeanty can. He can. And he's a Dallas boy. What a better story. Frisco, Texas. Grew up 5 miles from the Star. What a better story than that. I'm not going to put the reins of the offense on Deuce Vaughn. I can't do that. He's a gadget player for sure. He is. And I think that you can make ways to make him a dynamic player. I truly and honestly believe that. You're just going to have some creative coaches that can do it, because once he gets into the secondary, he's a nightmare because he's so small and he can just hide behind people. Right? But the problem is that if you're going to run a power running game, which Schottenheimer, that's his thing, offensive line, offensive coordinator, they love a power running game. I don't think offensive coordinator as well. I don't think that Deuce Vaughn can do that. I don't believe he can do that. I believe that you need to re-sign Rico Dowdle and you need to draft a running back. And if you don't get Ashton Jeanty, let's say he's gone by the time you get to the 12th pick, then one of those running backs from Ohio State will do you some justice as well. They're not terrible at all, right? But as far as just giving the keys to Deuce Vaughn, nah, I can't see that. Yeah, they did bring in the Kansas coach because he's an excellent offensive line coach. Excellent. And that's the one thing that Kansas State does is they run the damn football. That's what they do. And they can get that right. You understand what I'm saying? However, I'm not giving the keys to a 165-pound running back. I'm not trying to get a bigger back later in the draft. I'm not trying to get a Cam Scatterboo that runs a 4.7 40. I'm not trying to do that. Not at all. Excellent football player, but he's slow. We don't need that. We need something dynamic. We need a home run threat. You need something that's going to people will be afraid of. I'm not afraid of Deuce Vaughn. I'm not afraid of Cam Scatterboo. I'm not afraid of what's the running back's name from Texas Tech. Not afraid of guys running 4.6 and 4.7 40s. I'm not afraid of 3 yards in a cloud of dust. If you was going to do that, you should have just kept Zeke. That's what he turned into, a big back that's not going to give you a lot. He'll give you 3 or 4 yards. I need 50. I need a Detroit Lions backfield. That's what I need. I need something that's going to move the crowd. I need Gibbs and Montgomery. That's what I need. And I think Rico Dowdle and Ashton Jeanty will give you that. I do. Listen, Clown Boys, that's an excellent question. I kind of said that earlier in the show. I did. I said, your one all-pro on your offensive line now is Tyler Smith at guard. And hell, he'd be all-pro if you move him to tackle. I would not be opposed to finding a free agent guard, moving Tyler Smith to left tackle, and moving Tyler Guyton to his natural position at right tackle. I'm not opposed to that at all. I'm not opposed to Tyler Guyton being the swing tackle and keeping Terrence Steele, because Terrence Steele, after Zach Martin got hurt, Terrence Steele played a lot better. He did. And I think that he was trying to cover a little bit for Zach Martin and still trying to get to his man, and he was just getting blown off, right? Blown off the ball. But I think with Tyler Guyton being a first-round pick, you have to give him an opportunity. But I wouldn't be opposed to moving Tyler Smith to left tackle. I wouldn't be opposed to it at all because he's very good. His rookie year, he was fantastic at left tackle. You say let Rico walk. Rico gave you 1,000 yards last year with a shitty offensive line. What do you do if you let Rico walk? Do you bring somebody in? Would you bring in Nick Chubb and team him up with Ashton Jeanty if that's who you want to draft in the first round? Listen, Cowboy champs. Okay, I'm gonna subscribe to you right after this, man. I will. Clown Boys. I that same exact picture I had it on my podcast a couple weeks ago because of the Jones. Yeah, it's kind of wild. Yeah. I would let Tyler. You know what? And I don't disagree with that at all. May the best man win. May the best man win, especially if you get, because I tell Terrence Steele that he needs to renegotiate his contract anyway because he's making too much damn money. And that way you can open up a competition because you don't want somebody overpaid just sitting on the bench. So you renegotiate his contract and you let them two battle it out, and I'm not opposed to that at all. And may the best man win. Not opposed to that at all. Willie. So you say Nick Chubb and draft a running back high in the draft. I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. I just think Rico is easier to sign. I think you sign him for cheaper, and you see that you can get 1,000 yards out of him. That's what I think. Steele is making way too much money. Way too much, man. Overpaid like crazy. And especially if you're not going to block nobody. Like, at least get in the damn way. You know what I'm saying? I'm not in disagreement, Willie. I think that you should give Hunter Olympia a shot, especially down short yardage situations. And especially down with it, like if you're down at the 5, I don't think it's a question that Hunter Lemke should get the football. I don't. I think Hunter Lemke should get some fullback screens too. I think Hunter Lemke should be more involved in the offense in general. Dak had him pretty involved in the offense before he got hurt. He was kind of taking that second tight end spot. He was just coming out of the backfield, but he was catching a lot of passes. He's a good football player. He is. He's a really good football player. I think in short yardage situations, especially, like I said, especially close to the goal line, give Hunter Lemke the football and just see what he can do. I don't even know why they wasted time with Zeke. I don't. But, I've talked about that 10, 15 times. So draft Gentry and a running back in the 5th. So you want to get 2 of them. You want to run 2 rookies. If you're going to draft the running back later on and draft the running back that I think can move the crowd, I think Devin Neal can from Kansas. I like him. I think he's a really good running back. I didn't really get an opportunity to see him until they played Colorado, but when they played Colorado, I was like, damn, this dude can run. He's good. He's good. He looked good. Yeah, Hunter Lemke looked good when he had the ball in his hands, period. You know what I'm saying? He did. But I think that I just think that this football team, and I'm going to talk about like I said, I'll talk about the other side of the trenches on my next show. But I think that the one thing that this team has to fix no matter what, we can talk about skill position players all day long. If you don't fix these trenches, you can forget it. Forget it. You're going to be in for another long season. Listen. Marion Barber was probably my favorite player in the NFL for a long time. Strictly because, and I think that I fell in love with Marion Barber when he made that run, and it was only like a 3-yard run against the New England Patriots where he was trapped like 4 yards deep in the end zone and ran over like 12 people. Even though there's only 11 on defense, he ran over one of his own players too to get to the 3-yard line. The best run I've ever seen. You have to make some changes to the offensive line, and you have to get some defensive tackles that can get penetration. You have to. That's the only way that this football team gets better. Keep these linebackers clean. Keep them clean. And I'll get to linebackers in another show, but keep them clean. I just think that there's ways to make this better, and the first thing that you have to do is you have to fix this defensive line. You have to. And you get a golden opportunity because they're all free agents. All of them are. And I think the only one I would keep is Osa Odighizuwa. That's it. You get an opportunity to start over. And it doesn't have to be like you have to go sign these big-time flashy players. You just need to get guys in here, especially defensive tackles, guys that are going to come in here and be hungry and get after the football and just make the game violent in the middle. And good football teams do that. And like I said, the Eagles showed you that's how you win. Jalen Carter is just violent in the middle, just penetration. That's what he does. Disrupt the play. That's all you have to do. If you disrupt the play, bust up the timing of the play, 9 times out of 10 it's going to fail. And that's what you have to have. And Mozzie Smith back there with the safeties and shit is not doing you any good. It's not. You have to get a game changer. I'm going to subscribe to you right after this, man. I appreciate the subscription. That's what you have to do. So I said that earlier to do. I said that earlier in this show as well. Dak had throw the ball 25, 30. I'm not a big fan of Dak throwing the ball 50 times. I'm not. Anytime Dak is throwing the ball that many times, that means we're way behind. I'm not a big fan of that. I'm not a big fan of it at all. You need to be able to throw the ball 25, 30 times a game and run the ball 20, 25 times. Agreed. That's when the Cowboys are their best. That's when they're the best. And Dak can operate off play action, and Dak is very, very good off play action. He's very good off play action, especially if the play action means something. And what I mean by mean something is got to be the running game has to be successful, and they have to respect the run. If they don't respect your run, then play action pass is just a slow drop back, and it ain't gonna do nothing but get the defensive ends tight. They just meeting you when you get back there, and that's not what you need. Now, you're talking about Michael Williams. Yeah, he will be there at 12. He will be. You just have to make a decision on what do you want. Do you want another defensive end, or do you need some dynamic football players on offense? You have to make, especially if they're there. Now, if Genty's gone and McMillan are gone, then I agree with that draft pick 100%. I do. I agree with that. But you cannot leave one of those offensive players on the board. You've wasted a lot of capital in these last few years on offensive and defensive linemen in the first round, and you haven't got. You got Tyler Smith, 3 years ago? 2 years ago was Mozzie Smith. Last year was Tyler Guyton. That's a lot of draft capital on your offensive and defensive line with your number one picks, and only one of them really has panned out. The other two have not. You got lucky with CeeDee Lamb. You got lucky he was even available where you drafted him. You got very lucky. I just don't think I can go one more year and draft a defensive lineman. I don't. Micah Parsons worked out. That worked out tremendously well a few years ago, too. That worked out well. But he was more of a linebacker anyway. They just changed him to defensive end because Dan Quinn liked him at defensive end, and now he's, that's what he does. I just feel like the first pick of the draft, you have to give me something that can blow the roof off this thing. And it's either got to be a running back or it's got to be a wide receiver. I believe that. Now, like I said, if the players that you can get are not there, right, then, of course, you're going to draft the best player on the board. And I think somebody like Michael Williams will probably be the best player on the board. Yes, agreed. Agreed. And I think if Genty falls, if he goes to 12, I think he's the best player on the board. So I refuse to give an Eagle any credit since the KC team was not interested in winning. That defensive line was good, though. As much as I hated to see it, I didn't even want to watch the Super Bowl because I hate Philly that much. But as much as I hate to say it, man, that defensive line was good. Yeah, Mozzie Guyton, both of those picks set the team back. Agreed. Yeah, they have to do something, man. You can't get this one wrong. You got to get this one right. McCarthy wanted to run the ball. Steven wanted CD to earn his money. And I agree with that, too. I do. And I believe that that's why they didn't sign a running back last year, because they wanted CD to earn that money. Because they knew I believe wholeheartedly that's why they didn't sign a running back. Oh, excuse me. Yes, a running back, especially one of the big name running backs. One of the running backs like Derrick Henry bought a damn house here in Frisco. His wife is here in Frisco. He worked out the whole summer in Frisco, and you don't even call the dude. It's the only thing that makes sense. Like, no, CD gonna earn this money. Like, come on, man. Like, you have to do what's best for your football team. And the easiest way for CD Lamb to get open is a running game. Because like I said, you can't double team him that way. You have to bring another person in the box. You have to stop the run. And Rico Dowdle ain't scary. Don't get it twisted. He definitely ain't scary. He played better as the season progressed, and especially after they started rotating the young offensive linemen into the rotation because they had to out of injury, because of injury. But Rico Dowdle's not just striking fear in my heart, but I think Ashton Genty gives you that. And I do agree with you. They need two running backs. They absolutely, hell, every good team in the NFL got two of them. I hate the Eagles, man. I can't stand their ass. Yeah, agreed. Mike, I can only go by history. And Schottenheimer's history says that he's going to run the damn ball. That's what they say he's going to do. I mean, you look at his offenses in the past, right? And you got a long past to look at. You got 25 years of past to look at. He's gonna run the football. That's what he's gonna do. He's gonna instill an offense that's gonna be predicated on running the football. And I just don't think that your offense can be predicated on running the football with Deuce Vaughn. It can't be. So you got to get something else. Ty Warren wouldn't be a bad pick. Don't disagree with that. Rico might be gone. He might be. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, right? I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all. The only thing that I'm saying is that if you're going to let him walk, first of all, let me backtrack a little bit. The Cowboys should have never let Tony Pollard go. That was the first thing that they never should have done. They never should have let Tony Pollard go in the first place. If Tony Pollard is still on this roster, we're not even having this conversation right now. We're not going from defensive linemen to running backs. We're not doing that, right? Because Tony Pollard, he showed you last year in Tennessee that he still got a lot of juice in the tank. You know what I'm saying? Never should have let him go in the first place. But you did. You let him walk. I think that the Cowboy fan base and people like me that love to talk about the Cowboys, I think we were okay with Tony Pollard walking under the assumption that they were going to address the position after they let him walk. And they didn't do that, which leads us to today. And this is why we're talking about taking a running back in the first round. Bad business. They got to run. They have to. Y'all got to get a running back, but I want to see who Jerry Jones going to get. Me too. Me too, Mike. I want to see too. I'm agreed. 3 years ago, they didn't replace young Zeke's production in the draft. I think they did. I think they did it with Pollard. I think Pollard just got hurt and he was slow for a year and they felt like they could move on from him. But then last year, the only thing that they had in Tennessee was Tony Pollard, and he was good. He was very good. And I believe that they realized that they messed that up. Now, like I said, I think everybody was under the assumption that they would address that after they let him go. Yeah, I think everybody was, but they didn't. They didn't, and this is where we're at. You know what? If you keep Tony Pollard and Zeke, I think Tony Pollard and Rico Dowdle, I think Tony Pollard, and if it would have progressed another running back in the draft this year, I think that your mainstay should have been Tony Pollard, though. I do. Zeke, let's be honest, Zeke ate his way out of position. He did. Zeke got fat and slow. That's what happened to Zeke. And now, you know, he doesn't have a roster to play with. Not yet. A big back, and then a back like Gentile Paul. Agreed. I don't disagree with that at all. Pollard was a running back. What was the starting running backs? It was Henderson for the Rams. I don't even think he plays for the Rams anymore. He was the starter in Memphis. Pollard was kind of your gadget back. He was kind of your Christian McCaffrey back, if you will. He'd go play some slot receiver, come back here and run the ball. He'd do a lot of things. He'd return kicks. He did a lot of things. You ain't lying. But if that's the all-in, shit, man. I hope we don't do that all-in again. I ain't going to lie to you. Cowboys did not use Pollard correctly. Agreed. I agree with you 100%. And Rico, especially towards the end of the season, Rico was a very good running back. Zeke was partying too much. Oh, first 4 years in the NFL, Mike, ain't no question about it. Zeke was an absolute animal. And then Zeke got paid. And then Zeke got fat. And then Zeke got slow. And then Zeke was gone. And then he was back for this year, and I don't even know why he came back. But, yeah, he was back. And then, yeah, he was gone. Listen. Everyone forgets that Jerry let go of the running backs coach and Blasco replaced him. Agreed. And I thought that they were going to sign Tashard Choice as the running back coach this year. I really did. Because of his history with the Cowboys, and he's been very successful as a running backs coach at the University of Texas. He's put out some phenomenal running backs from the University of Texas in the last few years. But he didn't get the job. He didn't. Zeke's decline was amazing and quick. I agree. It was extremely amazing and extremely quick. But that's kind of the thing with the running back, especially when you run him into the ground. And that's why I agree with Clown Boy, because you need two of them to keep that from happening again. Everybody's not Saquon Barkley. They're just not. And everybody's not Derrick Henry. They're just not. You need two running backs. And I think the Lions have really kind of written the blueprint for that you can have two phenomenal running backs and both of them can get, close to 1,000 yards and you can have a very successful offense. Like the Lions, let's be honest. Let's be honest. The Lions were the best team in the NFC all year long. It's just the injury bug got to them too. They were more successful with the injury bug getting to them than the Cowboys were for sure, right? But the injury bug caught up to them. Did Zeke get fed or the O-line get bad after Zeke got paid? A little bit of both. A little bit of both. I'll give you that one. Zach Martin was getting older. Zeke got bigger. You know what I'm saying? It is what it is. Tex McMillan. You talking about Tedatory McMillan, the wide receiver? Is that who you saying you would get with a first round pick? I don't disagree with that, especially if Genty's gone. And hell, if both of them are there at the same time, you got a decision to make, boy. He was way too cheap to pay him. But the Lions recognize how the Lions have already showed you they're gonna do what it takes to win. With their coaching staff and their players, they're gonna do what it takes to win. Eagles have shown you that too. Eagles have financial constraints every single year, but they put together crazy teams every year. They put together damn Pro Bowl teams every damn year. They do. And they have the same salary cap constraints, if not more, than the Cowboys do. Especially coming up in the future, because Jalen Carter, in a couple of years, they're going to have to pay him, and it's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot. A whole lot. You got to pay him. Okay. Hour and 16 minutes, that's my show tonight. If you haven't done it yet, man, please like and subscribe. I appreciate everybody tuning in. This next show that I do, I'll do it early in the week. For real this time, I promise you. It'll be on the other side of the trench. It'll be the offensive lineman. And I'll show you some things. I just don't think that the offensive line right now is that terrible, but I think that they can make some changes. Not necessarily even some changes. I think that the offensive line is okay. I think that they have some growing to do. I think that the one weakness that they have is at the left tackle. And it's just because Tyler Guyton, he didn't have a good rookie season. But if he improves and if he actually is working on his game, which a lot of people talking, in these little Cowboy circles are saying that this dude is in the locker room, he's in the facility every day working, which is a great thing, right? Which means that he understands his deficiencies and he wants to get better. And that's a great thing. And he's a great kid, and it seems like he's super hungry. He's just got to get better. You know what I'm saying? And left tackle, it's the most important position that you have on that offensive line. And you move the guy from left tackle to guard because you drafted this dude, and you hoping that it pays off. A lot of people don't think he can play football. They just don't. And he's going to have a put up or shut up year. And I think he's going to have a very, very, very short leash in order to do it. We'll talk about that next go around, because this offensive line is just as important as the defensive line to the success of the Cowboys in 2025. You got to fix these trenches, because if you fix these trenches, you can win. That's for sure. Okay, y'all. Cowboy C3, I appreciate everybody tuning in. Okay, last thing before we go. I think Savion Williams will be available in the third round. I don't think you have to push to the second round to get him. I don't. I really don't. The one person that I think that the Cowboys, and I'm not saying that they should draft him in the second round. I'm saying that I understand that he'll be there in the second round, is somebody like Derek Harmon from Oregon. and I actually put a picture of him on the thumbnail. Phenomenal football player. He was pretty good at Michigan State. He wasn't terrible at Michigan State. He transferred to Oregon, and it was like a light switch came on. And that dude was all over the place at 6'5", 310 pounds at defensive tackle. And if the draft goes where you can get Genty in the first round and you can get him in the second round, there is a big possibility that Savion Williams will be there in the third round. And I love the dynamics that Savion Williams gives you. I love the versatility that he gives you. He's a little raw, but he's a quarterback that moved a wide receiver. But he was more of a running quarterback than he was anyway, and then he was a throwing quarterback anyway. And one of those dudes that gives you a dynamic football player that you can get in the second round and give you some stability at that wide receiver position. That's another weakness on this Cowboys roster. I think we can do it. Tuesday, for real this time. I got my optics. I got everything. Tuesday, we're doing offensive lineman 8 p.m. for sure. Yes. If Savion Williams comes out and runs a 4.3, he absolutely will move up in the books. Now, if he comes out there and runs a 4.5, then the Cowboys get him in the third round for sure. But if he runs a 4.3, you're talking about low 1, high 2. You're not going to be able to get him. You may be able to steal him in the second round, maybe. Yeah, if he does that, you know what I'm saying? Then it is what it is. Tuesday, 8 p.m. We'll be right here talking about offensive line play for sure. Mike, I can see you kind of wild. You please like and subscribe and tune in for sure. You make the show fun. All right, y'all. Tuesday, 8 o'clock, we'll talk offensive line play. All right. You guys have a great evening. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. If you haven't done it, like and subscribe, man. Appreciate each and every one of you. I will see y'all on Tuesday. All right, y'all. Peace.